So Guillermo del Toro. We all know Guillermo del Toro. We all love Guillermo del Toro.
One more time and he'll appear.
And there's a lot of great Guillermo del Toro movies to talk about. I mean, there's the ones that everyone knows. Pan's Labyrinth is a masterpiece. Shape of Water. I mentioned Pinocchio just a few minutes ago. I think Nightmare Alley, which came out a few years ago, I think is one of his masterpieces, one of his finest achievements. I really adored that film. I thought a really great one to talk about for Hispanic Heritage Month was his first one, Cronos. This is a vampire movie. It follows an old man who owns an antique shop, discovers this ancient device in one of his statues called the Cronos device. It contains an immortal insect whose sting grants immortality to its victim. So he is unwittingly stung by this thing, becomes immortal, but at the cost of a vampiric transformation. His body starts changing and he starts hungering for human blood. He gets caught up in this attempt by this rich industrialist played by Claudio Brook with his kind of bumbling yet violent nephew played by Ron Perlman. He has been searching for the Cronos device for years and years and desperately wants the immortality that it brings and will do anything to get it. I've heard some people say that they don't like this movie as much as his later films. It definitely was lower budgeted than, his later stuff, which was produced in Hollywood. It's a first movie, so, it doesn't have the fluency and the fluidity of Del Toro's later movies. It's a little slower, a little more static. I think what makes it such a special film in his filmography is it's the only one thus far that he's been able to make in Mexico.
Really?
Yeah.
The only one? I thought The Devil's Backbone was made in Mexico.
That was made in Spain. He was he was originally going to make it in Mexico, but he wound up having to make it in Spain. And there's actually a very sad reason for that. There was his father was kidnapped. His family had to pay a huge amount of money. Luckily, his father was returned safely, but it was a pretty, damaging, horrible, traumatic experience, and he actually had to move his family out of Mexico after that, and hasn't been able to return and hasn't been able to produce another movie in his home country. And there obviously is, a very strong Mexican identity running throughout all of his movies, but Cronos is the only one where it's actually there on the surface. It's shot in Mexico, it's about Mexican characters, and it's completely from a Mexican point of view. Cronos has a quirkiness and a humor that is there alongside the melancholy and the sadness and the tragedy. It's got some, eccentric supporting characters. Ron Perlman, I think, is just great as the co-villain.
Bless his heart.
He's a weirdly lovable villain in spite of how horrible he is.
He's got that face. He looks like a bulldog.
And there's some interesting political commentary happening in it too. Like the villain played by Claudio Brook, the fact that he has an American nephew and that he runs this, ornate factory, it implies that he has some ties to America, which is, very subtly offering some commentary, on like American companies outsourcing jobs to Mexico and the Mexican economy, kind of being taken advantage of in that way. I hope Del Toro gets to make another film in Mexico one day. He's talked about it. It's been a very tough thing for him, not being able to make films in Mexico.
Or just go back. I mean, he's got a deep connection, of course, and I'm sure he has other family.
I just hope something works out somehow at some point where he gets to make another film in Mexico. I would love to see that as a viewer.